Hey guys, Hatter here. A little over 8 years ago, I started a project in which I wanted to combine two of my favorite passions into one: Mobile Suit Gundam and Dungeons and Dragons. Now, having looked out online at what was available as far as Gundam tabletop role playing games go and what other attempts had been made, I found myself unsatisfied. And so, from that desire, Gundam 5e was born. Over the last 4 or 5 years, though, I have to admit that between personal life changes and losing focus on what I enjoyed about tabletop games in the first place, I'd kind of fallen out of love with developing them myself. But in that time, I also learned that the intersection of Gundam fans and tabletop players is a larger group than I could have possibly realized. Now, I've made a lot of great friends through this project, and I've seen a small group of playtesters grow into a full network of people, creating their own content and adaptations and spin offs. It's something that really makes me happy to see. So, with that in mind, it would be unfair to the players and creators within the Gundam 5e space to be denied ongoing support and development for the system, even if it left me personally unfulfilled. To that end, and some of you probably know this already, but I've handed the reins of Gundam 5e over to someone that I personally trust and has shown a passion and desire to keep the project alive. All right, so joining me now is my really good friend Jesse. You guys probably know him around the Discord server as Legion. He's been a huge part of Gundam 5e's development and was instrumental in developing the version 2, the version that everyone is kind of playing right now. And so, again, can't thank you enough for that, Jesse. How are you doing today, man?
I'm pretty tired, man. College life is hitting me and all that. I just finished all my exams. And
Nice,
no, I
nice.
woke
Well, I'm
woke up
I'm
early.
glad that, those are in the books, done. Hopefully you passed.
We'll find out.
Exactly. Well, so yeah, give me a little bit of background or kind of like explain for the viewers here, what your background is with tabletop gaming and kind of how you got into Gundam and then how you and I kind of met just via Discord.
Totally. With tabletop, I'd always sort of liked the idea because I'd heard about like D&D, right? It was this big thing. My mom used to play it back in the day in her friend's basement when you used to have to draw maps and everything by hand.
Yeah, the old analog days.
Yeah. So she was like, "Yeah, no, I've heard of it and everything." So I started to look around and I eventually just sort of like had this weird curiosity. I'm like, I wonder if there's a Gundam 5e thing. So I eventually found the website. I joined, and then I remember that I still remember this. My first ever game was supposed to be with Pyro, but then he was like, "I don't want to do Gundam anymore. I'm going to do a Monster Hunter game."
Yeah, that's a super rug pull because it's like, "Hey, I'm in this
Yeah.
with giant robots," and then it's all of a sudden, anime monsters.
Right? And it was so like I didn't know anything, so I made this really shitty character. Like it was one of those, right, where it just didn't make sense. I think it was a warlock changeling. I was like, what the fuck am I doing? And then I like we all died first session, so I was like, oh fuck. It was bad. And then I guess from just there I sort of fell into some more games and everything, and just over time I was like, I really like tabletops, and it just became like a sort of an obsession for a little bit because I was like in a game every day of the week, which got a little rough. But I was just like, I love making character and like video games. Like I love Telltale games. Like that is my number one picks.
Yeah, those were awesome. What like at their peak when it was like the Game of Thrones one
Yeah,
and
Dead.
the Walking Dead.
Right. And I was playing them, and I'm like, I've always been like, there's got to be a way to play a game where I'm playing the game. It's me playing it. So I eventually just stumbled on, yeah, and I just joined the group and everything, and just over time, I was like, I just want to make shit, which was how I had gotten to sprite work, and then I did some because that was during V1 when a lot of it was a lot easier, I would say, to make stuff,
Sure.
but I
And
started
I would
making
say
more
that you took
independent stuff.
to the creative aspect probably faster than most people do in the
Yeah,
tabletop space. And in particular, of everyone that has contributed to Gundam 5e, you almost just like instinctively got it. Like you knew what
yeah.
made good creative decisions. It wasn't like, here's my weirdo power fantasy that
Yeah.
only one person's going to be interested in.
It's because I said so. I've always found though that I'm like a sponge. Like even guard captain would agree with that. Where it's like it does take me a little bit, but I pick up on things very quickly. And to be fair, a lot of the people that I was getting advice from were working on like if it was from you guys, so a lot of base knowledge was from right there. Because I
Yeah.
think
That
At
always
first, it was
helps.
yeah, I think at first me and Scorp had made like a Code Geass thing, and then from there I was like, I just want to keep making shit. Because
Nice.
like I had the mentality, I was like, if it's not in it, I'll just do it.
And I think that that's kind of like the approach that I was hoping a lot more people would take is, kind of
Mhm.
just going for it because that's really the inspiration behind everything that I do on this channel is, kind of encouraging, empowering, and inspiring people to go after, what they want to create, what in whatever hobby space it is. So formally, yeah, I would like to announce that Legion here is going to be taking over, sort of all the day-to-day development that's going on with Gundam 5e. And, I'm curious, like, what direction do you want to take it in? We've kind of seen what my creative direction has been. I'm interested in, kind of sharing what your creative vision is for the project.
Yeah, for right now at least. I did change a couple things around where like threshold I changed like immediately. That was the first thing that I went to because I was looking at other systems and I was like, I really like it when you just like negative damage because I think it helps because what I was noticing with Gundam 5e was that often you would have to hoard your players, which just more even if they're weak enemies, right? 100 goblins is 100 goblins type
Yeah.
deal. So I changed that like immediately, and I just really wanted to start to get more mechanics into it because like base version 2 I really do enjoy, but it's very bare bones, and it's nice though because it's kind of one of those systems where you can branch off and do your own thing. But then a lot of people are like, well, it's 5e, I need my hard line rules everywhere. So from there, I started to like I made a game, and currently we're like testing a lot of stuff, and it's more so just like you set up a really good foundation for V2. It's just then expanding it a little bit more, right, and getting a lot of more stuff, and especially like I've been looking more into like Star Wars 5e because I'm like I think that they have a lot of good, especially for like weapons, because I know a lot of people complain about oh weapons aren't unique enough or they don't do anything other than I pick the bigger weapon.
Yeah, and Star Wars 5e was a huge inspiration to me, like, that was the idea behind having a website, like a consolidated source of information that people could go to that was kind of a living document as opposed to just like a PDF that, it's like, "Oh, do you have the version 2 PDF? Do you have version 2.3?" Like, I like having something where it's like everybody's up to date because everybody's working from the same, living document.
Yeah. And I would say too as well that I've honestly a lot of the stuff that I've been testing out and working on and want to eventually implement, it's a lot rough right now. Was just a lot of stuff that we had ideas in like for the development team for V2 that just kind of like everyone couldn't agree on how to do it, so it kind of got shelved. So a lot of like the notes that we had left over and everything. So I'm kind of like, oh, I was like, that's a really good fucking idea. I'm like, why didn't we continue with this? I was like, what
Yeah,
happened?
and, I think that that's kind of part of the issue that you're gonna run into is with the whole, like, design by committee is it's very difficult to get people to agree on how to implement a particular mechanic, even if they all agree on, "We do want this, but we just don't
Yeah.
know how to make it work." So I think that having just having you behind the wheel and kind of having that final say as opposed to me kind of outsourcing to the group and saying like, "Hey, everyone give me your votes. Is this good?" I think that it's a lot more effective at getting things in play faster.
Yeah, and I would say too though it was a lot on our parts because a lot of us just didn't communicate anything. Like I don't remember doing much other than like a couple mobile suits here and there at the time, but I remember like Scorp would do a lot of things and just not say anything, and then like Ultra would do a lot of things, but like a lot of us just didn't really talk. Like it was just all of us weren't communicating. So then a lot of stuff with these are like just conflicting, or it was so different that it felt like it was just another system. So it was
Yeah.
kinda like because right now I've been using well, not using, that's a mean word, but I've been like, I was in communication when I was making the warships at first with the Bronze Enigma crew because I was like, they're, like, really great people, I've talked to them a couple times before
Yeah,
here,
I
there,
love Worst Heroes. He's a great, dungeon
right?
master, so
And I was like, like, "How have you guys been doing it?" Because like, I remember V1, right? Those were great, but I'm like, since then, like, if like, so we were talking about it, and they were, like, really the first ones to give me a lot of the ideas that I had for it. And then I remembered where I was like, oh yeah, no, Hatter had an idea that I also really like where warships just have dog shit to hit anything. And then like and it was also an idea that I wanted to implement of like an enemy maker so that you could put like captains or pilots or whatever if like a player wanted to take a hold, like they really shouldn't, but type deal. And so I was like, if we lower that, you can add someone, and then it goes, it's a little bit easier to hit things.
Yeah. So you brought up a good point there because there's that difficulty when it comes to balancing, well, game balance and, of course, player desire. And so
Yeah,
that was always something that I struggled with, between players that wanted to kind of customize their own mobile suits versus players that are like, why isn't this specific variant of
yeah,
a Desert Zaku with a cannon that
yeah,
doesn't have the rabbit ears, but also like,
yeah,
I'm looking for this obscure 1989 MSV, unit, and so what ends up happening is, like, kind of explain my personal struggle with it is, I never wanted the upgrade version take a base Zaku 2 and then add a cannon to it to be better than the stock Zaku 2 cannon. So
yeah.
what's your approach when it comes to balancing, like, player desire versus, gamification?
So it's funny that you bring that up because I have this one player in my games now. He's like super into the customizing thing because I had him during Seed, right? And so like how Seed is with its customization. So I really
Yeah,
didn't know how to do it then, but for now, I remember we had another rule about making mobile suits where like over time you could build and upgrade mobile suits, but it was so version 1, I want to say, that I had to
definitely.
update it. Right. So now, like during my Zeta game, I've been doing a lot more downtime as an active, like they just recently got like a full month to do stuff. So during your downtime, you can upgrade stats, you can add equipment, you can integrate equipment. So realistically, if you had a Zaku 2 and like you couldn't get a cannon, but say you found one or you got one as like a reward or you bought one, you can spend your downtime basically just making a Zaku cannon, right?
There you
Um,
go, perfect.
right. So
Yeah,
like that's
so,
been
I
my
mean,
main
that's
thing
something
now.
that I think a lot of games lack is productive downtime, right? I think that, like, the Genesis system, like,
Yeah.
Fantasy Flight games, like the FFG, Star Wars, like, they really prioritize downtime activity, which is very
Yeah.
cool, so I'm glad that you're kind of bringing that, into Gundam 5e.
And I felt because it was as well, I had a lot of people, like, especially for this game, my players were kind of like, What's up with the training for proficiencies and everything?" And I was like, "Well, I'm like, it's still a very V1 thing. I don't think we really touched it for V2, but also that was like we had so many ideas that a lot of stuff just got sort of put in that didn't have its subsidiaries to it. So I'm like." With this training, that was the point. You were supposed to have mold, like it wasn't just you trained during downtime; it was if you wanted to.
Right.
And there's so many, I think at one point we had something about where you make an honest living or something like that, so you don't have to expend stuff, but then everyone was like, "Oh, I don't like that. I don't wanna
Yeah.
work."
Right, and I think that that's one of the things that, and this goes for Dungeons& and Dragons 5e as well, is so many of the mechanics are built there if you want to use them, right? Like,
Yeah,
not everybody uses encumbrance rules, not everybody uses, like, the daily living expenses rules, they're more immersive if you do,
yeah,
but, it's nice to have them, but you don't
mm,
have to necessarily, it's just take what you want, leave the rest,
yeah,
um so I love that, I think that one of the earliest mechanics that we brought into the game was, by Terran, was the destructible shields, system, and
I love
some
that.
people loved it. But yeah, I mean, I wanted that to be available to people, but not necessarily be, hard and fast rules.
Yeah, I really liked it, and so I had made it a core rule, but it was always, even when it was an optional rule, you didn't have to roll to destroy your shield type thing, so that like, a lot of my players have run into that, they're like, "Well, I don't wanna do it," and I'm like, "Don't." It's
No.
it's there if you want the extra little health pool. Like honest to God, it's probably like one or two hits most to the shield. So I'm like,
Yeah, that's the other thing that I think, people need to understand about V2, like, current edition Gundam 5e is that, like, the damage values are out of control. Like, you can't come to it expecting it to be similar to D&D 5e where it's like, "Oh, I'm gonna do 4 points of damage here, 8 points of damage there." I mean, we're talking about, everything's double digits.
yeah. And that was something that like my players and sort of I had realized sort of quickly because I ran this small little encounter. They were all mostly in Zeta suits, like GM2s or whatever they could find. And like four draw Cs that I had given them the bonus action of help almost killed them. I was like, these little shitty things with Vulcan guns, or and even with the new threshold rules, like it brought out the battle so much longer for just these four units. And there was nothing else there. So I was
I
like,
mean
oh my god. I was like, this is bringing longevity to my game.
and I think that that's, the importance of playtesting, right? Is because,
Mhm.
all of these ideas, they all sound good on paper until until you start actually rolling some
Uh,
dice and you see like, wow, this is this is out of
right.
control.
That's been me with Scout. I'm gonna be honest. Their trick shots, like like one of my players has been using them, and I'm just like, holy shit. I'm just like I love them, like, they're really cool additions, but I was like, "Holy fuck," like, the whole fact that you can just do them as like, for free if you have the right tag, and a lot of things are like, if it was regular 5e, I think it'd be a lot better because you can throw so much more, but it's like, if I wanna he always picks general, for example, so a lot of things are getting trick shots, and I made it a rule where I'm like, "You can't trick shot a ship." I'm like,
Yeah,
I'm
that's out
like
of control.
right?
And maybe that's, again, that's a good example of where would it be beneficial to like add more tags versus, if you added more tags, then what level of complexity does that bring to every other class?
Oh my god. Like, that was I went on, like, a little schizo moment with that because I was like, "I wanna add more tags because I really liked how in V1 they all had their own little thing that they sorta did." Whether it was, like, I heal 1 more extra dice or I heal double on generals and stuff like that. But I was like, "I kinda wanna bring those back," but I'm like, the ones that we had were so narrow, and I'm like, for scouts and some other classes that dealt with tags and everything, I was like, "What if we had, like, mass production, limited production, 1 production, and then, like, had like, everything had 2 tags that would join together then to make 1?" And it was something that I was because like, Elite Custom, for example, I was like, Elite Custom is cool, but it's so broad, right? And it's like,
Yes.
what do we then identify as a custom or versus the elite in it? And I was like, if you add a custom tag, you could make it like a magic item where only that player is attuned to it or type thing, right? So I
Yeah.
was kind of, it's been a lot of brainstorming with that stuff, but I haven't implemented it because fuck you, roll 20. You had a data mine, you had a data breach, and you deleted everything I worked on. So fuck you.
Oh man, yeah. Um So that brings up a good point is like virtual tabletops. I remember when I first started, I was all on board with the Astral Train, which I was so brokenhearted when they went under and like it was bad enough when they just stopped active development because I was like, oh, okay, at least we can still use it and we still
Yeah,
have like the custom sheets and everything. But then it was like, nope, we're closing the doors for good. So
yeah.
really the only options out there are what, like, Tabletop Simulator on Steam, Roll20, and then, like, a couple of users have tampered with the idea of using Foundry, but, that the learning curve to implementing a new system in Foundry is insane.
Even just learning Foundry, because yeah, like I remember guard captain and everything. I was trying to learn Pathfinder, so gave me the key and everything, and I tried it, and I was like, "Holy fuck!" And I did a lot of Lancer on Foundry, so I kind of knew it a little bit. But I'm like, "Holy fuck!" Like it's such a, I love it. It's a great tool, but I'm like, "Holy!" Like making a whole thing for it, not just using like the existing stuff, would be fucking horrendous.
It is a very robust system, which, and I've always said this, is it's like the more options that you have in a system, the more complex it becomes just to use, like, even the more simple tools within it. So, yeah, I mean, if it were possible to put together a Foundry plugin, I would love to do that, but, that's definitely not on my radar for now.
Yeah.
So, um, to wrap up here, what would you say is like your next chief priority? Like, what would be your next project that you really want to get done? You really want to get implemented within the system?
Honestly, like, it's so many things, but honestly, the one big thing that I do wanna get down a little bit better is, like, infantry, because, like, I ran a little encounter, but it was I'm not gonna say it was boring, my players enjoyed anything I do because it's me, guys, but it's like, when you play other systems and, like, mech or just even, like, mech systems, mech games or whatever, you still feel cool being on the ground, right? And it can then pose like, "Oh shit, there's a Zaku 1 aiming its gun at me, like, what do I
Yeah.
do?" There
Well,
and
you
I
you
think getting
sidestep it
that
like
down.
Shiro and
Yeah, yeah, well, my bad, guys, my evasion's 19, my bad. I forgot. But no, I think that's definitely something that I wanna get a little bit more like, I'm not sure how to go about it yet, which is still what we're trying to figure out a couple times now is when we've done infantry combat, but
that's been a
it's
very
fickle.
difficult thing to kind of balance out, and I thought that the thresholds would help with that. In V1, infantry combat was just non-existent because
Yeah,
I
it
was
was
like
just there.
you're right, it's like, I just assume that no one's gonna want to do
Yeah,
this, but I think that as the system gained popularity, people wanted more. It's like, "Oh, well, what about ship combat? What about tanks? What about, core fighters?" And I'm like, "Wait, you guys wanna play a Gundam game and not be in a
yeah.
Gundam?"
Yeah.
Well, cool. I'm looking forward to seeing how that system plays out, and I can't thank you enough for your contributions to everything. And I obviously wish you the best of luck, and I'm always going to be offering my support to help, bring these ideas to life. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, it's honestly like it's a great group of people. I definitely would say that I found a lot about myself and just a lot of stuff that I like from y'all. So like I owe y'all a lot. This small little funny Canadian kid. But
Well,
no,
you're
I really
holding it
appreciate
down for us up in the Great White North. But yeah, thank you for joining me today and kind of sharing your thoughts. And yeah, I'm like I said, I'm going to direct everybody else's comments to you because you're running the show now. But yeah, no, again, I can't express my gratitude enough, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you do with it.
Thank you, man. And thank you for having me. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, yeah, this is a way overdue. So, well, thanks, and cheers, everybody. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a good rest of your day.